All right, we've given each of the speakers today 15 minutes to use them however they would like. Our next speaker is going to be Fred Karger, and he wants to actually introduce himself with a bagpipe play. So this should be interesting, and everyone please give a warm welcome to Fred Karger and his bagpiper. Hey, I am Fred Karger, and as I know many of you are thinking, Fred who? So some of you have seen our Frisbees. We've set up a table over here. I'm sorry we're a little late. We're precinct walking in Dover today. And I just want to introduce a new friend of mine who is from New Hampshire. Is Kirk Brunson, who has just got back from Scotland in the International Bagpiper Competition, where they did very well. But we've been traveling with Kirk all over New Hampshire for the last 2 months, walking door to door every weekend with a nice troupe, giving away Fred Frisbees. But I like the bagpipe music. It represents my frugality, a balanced budget, a government that's responsive to the people, and with that good Scottish thrift. So without further ado, Kirk the bagpiper.
Sunpack.
It's a hard act to follow, but thank you. It gives you a little flavor of what we've been doing. I don't know if we visited your house yet, but we are going, I pledged to give a Fred Frisbee to every household in New Hampshire, and we've made a pretty good dent so far. Weather permitting, we've been very lucky. You're wondering, who is this guy? Well, let me give you just a little bit of background. My name is Fred Karger. I'm from Laguna Beach, California. I'm a longtime political consultant and strategist, starting in Young Republicans, and I know there are a lot of the YRs here. I was talking to David, when I was 26 years old and volunteering on a United States Senate race, my very first day on the job, they gave me an address of the Los Angeles County Young Republicans for Bob Finch, who some of you may remember, who was Richard Nixon's campaign chairman and his first secretary of then called Health, Education, and Welfare, now HHS. And I went off to the Los Angeles County Young Republicans. I, of course, joined, and I've been very involved till they threw me out at 40. And I think it's so important. I made wonderful friends. We, of course, had a lot of infighting, which probably I'm sure doesn't happen in any of the YRs these days. But it taught me a great lesson in politics, and it taught me about the ability to get along. I happen to have been in a little more of the moderate faction versus a little more of the conservative faction, and we had some pretty strong battles and elections and everything, but we came out shaking hands and working together to help elect Ronald Reagan and a whole slate of candidates. And it taught me something else. It taught me about Ronald Reagan, who is, of course, one of our great leaders, of course, but also helping us out in the Young Republicans in California. My boss, that some of you may have heard of, was a guy named Bill Roberts, and there was a firm called Spencer Roberts, Stu Spencer and Bill Roberts. And if you look in any Reagan book, you will see them prominently mentioned because they ran his first two campaigns for governor, 1966 and 1970. I worked for Bill Roberts at a company called the Dolphin Group for 27 years until I retired just 7.5 years ago. And I'm a political junkie. I love politics since I was about your age. I was about 8 years old. You 8? 7. Close. I always like to exaggerate a little. Anyway, and I started handing out campaign brochures with my dad, who was our Republican precinct chairman outside Chicago. We would hand out to the commuters a little brochure for Eisenhower. And I just liked it, and politics liked me, and I spent my life working in it. I've always been behind the scenes. I've always been the strategist and doing what a lot of my younger volunteers and staff are doing here, and I just loved it. After I retired 7 years ago and started considering my options, I was not too enchanted with the Republican Party. I was a little concerned about the direction. I was concerned that more people were leaving the party and registering as independents. New Hampshire, 42% of all voters here are undeclared. Most of those out of the Republican Party. We need to bring those independents back. We need to bring younger people into the party if we're going to have a future. I've been speaking at colleges and universities all over the country. When I came here, this is my 19th trip from California to New Hampshire. I came here in February of last year. It was a cold day. I went over to UNH and I spoke there in the basement of the MUB. And from that day forward, I've not stopped. And I've been to mostly every college and university here, bringing younger people in, some to the Republican Party, some just to the political process. When I was up at Dartmouth in January with the Washington Post reporter in tow who did the first big profile on my campaign, which helped get rid of the Fred Who moniker a little bit, I announced a proposal for the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, which is controversial, but it's to consider lowering the voting age to 16 or 17. And you're thinking, what do these kids do? They don't know enough to vote. Well, I have a lot of faith in our younger people, and particularly in the high schools. We have a problem. I was just with a principal today over in Dover. He's got a very good 1% dropout rate from high school. But in California and other big cities, where I'm from, we have 10, 20, 50% high school. So I'm thinking if we can teach politics real time in the high schools, kids will have politicians like me, mayoral candidates, gubernatorial candidates, going in actually wanting their votes, not just mock elections in high schools, that may keep a certain percentage of kids in high school, as well as getting them involved in the political process. Once they're through high school and they're off either working or in college, they're not as involved. If we can teach politics, we will see a lot bigger tents, we'll see a lot more open tents, I think, for the Republican Party and for the future of this country. I am a different kind of candidate. I am doing this on a shoestring budget. I think that there is too much money in politics. I resent some of these super PACs. I think those are the problem. I'm all for disclosure. I think that's very important. And I think we need to do things a little differently. That's why I'm going door to door. And I think everybody here who is, so involved in politics, you're here to listen to us candidates, can appreciate that. I've run the first commercials. I was on last September. I called it Good Morning New Hampshire. I ran it on WNYR for a week. We're showing it over there. I've run a lot of commercials in Iowa and around the country. I'm even taking on Big Oil because I think that they're unfairly taking advantage of the consumer. Fluctuations of gas prices, unemployment is a problem, and then people trying to get to and from work without the resources. The gas prices are so high. So I'm going to put a little pressure on Big Oil, and I started it with ExxonMobil, the biggest. I'm not afraid to tackle some pretty big targets. I want to, of course, focus number one on jobs. I'm calling it jobs first. We need to keep jobs in this country. We're exporting all our jobs. We're outsourcing. So we need to give these corporations incentives to keep their jobs here. We can't lose tens of thousands of jobs every month. That's why unemployment keeps going up. Secondly, and I call it kind of my Reagan-esque platform, and that's bringing back the American spirit. That's going to have a huge impact on jobs. You know, a lot of us in this room remember Ronald Reagan and what he did when he came into office as in a terrible time in 1981. Not very much different than when Obama got there. Only inflation was at 10.5%, but unemployment and the morale of the country because of the Iranian hostage situation was at an all-time low. Reagan had this undying spirit, as you know, and he brought this country back. He lifted our spirits. He lifted our optimism and that can-do attitude. Obama is depressed. I prescribed Zoloft for him last winter. He needs something to snap out of this. You know, he has a little good day or something, but he's not that inspirational president we saw in his campaign. As soon as he got elected, he just completely lost that, and he's been in a bad mood. And he's even had, you know, in the campaign when he was running, when things were going poorly, he had bouts of depression. He'd be withdrawn. And you know, we cannot have a president. We need somebody who's going to lift the spirit of America and make people want to get out and start their own businesses and feel good, and government can help in that regard, and certainly the president with a bully pulpit can do that. And then education reform, I think that is uppermost. We've got a future. There are a lot of kids here today. What kind of education are they having? What kind of future are we going to have as a country if we can't compete with the other industrialized nations? We're 23rd in science. We're 25th in math. That's just intolerable for the nation that started public education. So I'm going to be talking about issues. I'm trying to make this campaign fun, inclusive, bring younger people in. I'm so delighted to be here today with the young Republicans. I've not been invited to every party for a variety of reasons. Fox News, even though I met the qualifications just barely of a 1% rating in the national polls to be in their debate. I'm sure many of you saw it last Thursday in Ames, Iowa. Even though I met the qualifications, they refused me entry. And I just filed a 158-page complaint with the Federal Election Commission because I'm not going to take that. If I meet the qualifications and am excluded, I'm going to fight. So I filed a 158-page complaint with the Federal Election Commission against Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes, the heads of Fox Network. I even delivered a copy of this big, thick document to Mr. Murdoch at News Corp in New York before I drove back up here. I've just rented a house in Manchester. I'm in my second month. I'm going to be here mostly full-time through the primary. The lease is through the 18th. It's the old Amato House up in Manchester on Highland, 377 Highland. You're welcome to drop by. I'm going to hopefully be seeing a lot more of you, and I love to talk to you and hear what's on your mind and tell you a little bit more about Fred Karger, and hopefully the Fred Who moniker will be a thing of the past. Anyway, I've had a great time here today. I'm going to go get a little lobster, which I've been waiting for. We're going to be set up over the table if you want to see our commercials. Everybody gets a Frisbee, notepads, and hopefully some good conversation. Thank you very, very much.